Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I am back again today doing another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the NBA, but a player and team that isn't really in the playoffs right now, and I guess it's really specifically a player, and that's Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, of course, is still coming off of an ACL injury that he suffered last year in the finals in June, and the Nets had decided to keep him out of the playoffs this summer and just wait until the next season for him to come back. So he obviously hasn't been playing for the last year, and so it's nothing really with current events. This is just a random side video that I wanted to do because I was thinking about it, and I had come to this realization that I think Kevin Durant might be the best scorer in NBA history, and that's a very loaded sentence, but I want to break down that sentence today and kind of talk through why I think Kevin Durant is the best scorer in NBA history. And so I'm going to be talking about his game and then talking about other players' games as well, because obviously there's a lot of competition for that title, and so I need to defend that statement and basically why I'm making that choice. And so without further ado, I'm going to start making the case and we will go from there. So when I think about Kevin Durant's game, a few things come to mind, and I think they come to mind for a lot of people. And to be specific, I'm not going to be talking about things like rebounding and playmaking and assists and steals and defense. This is solely about like putting the ball in the hole, just about scoring, nothing else. So like if somebody else comes back and says like, well, Kawhi Leonard's a better defender than Durant, well, that's not relevant here. This is just about putting the ball in the cup. So when I think about Durant, and I think a lot of people think about this when they think about Durant, they think immediately a very good shooter. And of course, yes, that is a very key facet of his game. If you look at his career three-point percentage, it's hovering right around 40%. It usually is somewhere between like 38 to 40% in any given season, which of course is very good. And so that's something he always has down. He can do things like come off of screens or curls or off-ball screens underneath the basket and come up and flare and then do catch and shoots and throw up the ball and get a good three-point shot. So that's one thing he can do well as far as his three-point shooting. Also, he can honestly just ISO and score three-pointers very well. Like I've seen him in the finals versus the Cavs, or just in regular season games as well when he was on the Warriors, or actually in OKC he did this quite a bit too, where he would just have the ball at the top of the key and they wouldn't really have a play drawn up, and he would either do a crossover and throw it up and make a three-pointer, or literally he would just be in a three-point stance and not really know, like there's no play developing, and so he would literally just check it and shoot it and make it. So his ability to improvise with his three-point shot is impressive as well. So I think from a three-point shooting standpoint, he really comes at it with three different ways. You have the screens and the catch and shoots that he's very good at to play off ball. He can just be a catch and shoot guy. He can then do like crossover moves and step backs as far as like going ISO. He can cross the dude up, step back, shoot it, and make it. He does those very proficiently. I remember it was during the 2013 to 14 season. Very random that I remember this, but I remember it because Vince Carter was on the Mavs at the time, and they were playing this awesome game versus OKC. And Vince Carter made a shot that was supposed to be like the game winner. It was like with 2 seconds left. He made this like corner fadeaway, and then Durant came back and made a shot to win that game. And I know I was kind of sad because I thought it was cool that Carter made the shot, but regardless, Durant had a crossover step back in that game from three. And then, as I said, his improvised three-point shot is just very good as well. Then I think about another facet of his scoring is his mid-range. His mid-range, he's just as proficient, or actually quite a bit better than three. And this is something that Kawhi Leonard's got a lot of attention for over the last year, but actually Durant can do it just as good, to take a guy mid-range, dribble around the free throw line or a little bit in from that. He can then take a guy with his back to the basket and do the little Dirk move, like the little fadeaway one leg thing. Durant has become very good at imitating that Dirk Nowitzki one-legged fadeaway shot, and it makes sense because they're actually relatively the same size. I believe Dirk was 7 feet, and despite whatever it says on like Basketball Reference or his basketball card or whatever his listed height is, Durant is 7 feet. It's pretty much common knowledge that he's 7 feet tall, and Yeah, so as far as that with the fadeaway, he can kind of emulate exactly Dirk's style of doing that because they're really the same height and same size. So from the mid range, he's really solid with those kind of mid post up moves where he'll do back downs and fadeaways and little. He can do like a pull through move where if you've ever seen Brook Lopez do this, he kind of has the ball to one side of him and he'll pull through, like just basically swap what side of the body his ball is on, and then shoot it up and then draw fouls like that. So it's something James Harden does quite a bit as well. Durant actually can do that too. Um, so mid-range, he's got it down pat. And then as far as a slasher, he is actually a very good slasher too. He can go cut to the basket for alley-oops or just passes and score underneath like that off ball. Or you can honestly just ISO him around the three-point line, and I would trust him enough to have enough moves and jukes and crossovers to be able to just to get to the rim one-on-one and put the ball in. He's actually a pretty decent dunker despite being very skinny. He has put on a little bit more muscle over the past couple of years. So to me, Kevin Durant can basically score it from anywhere on the court in any given way. And when I think about other players at the same time, like the obviously top of mind is going to be Michael Jordan, and people are going to say, well, Jordan's better. To me, I think Jordan, like what Jordan does, what Jordan does best, which is really like the mid-range back downs and like the mid-range pull-up J's. He does those better than Durant, but Durant can do so much more than him. Like Durant's Dirk Nowitzki fadeaway, Michael had a fadeaway, but I honestly might I I think that Durant's is more diverse in the kind of fadeaways he could do. And as far as three-point shooting, it's not a contest. Mike wasn't really a three-point shooter at all to speak of, or if he was, it wasn't ever something he relied on. Like when he made those like 5 threes against Portland in the '92 finals, people were like shocked that he made that many threes in one game. Whereas Durant, it's like a integral part of his game and something he can rely on. And like if he can't get to the basket some night because the defense is walled up, he can just rely on the jump shot. Whereas Michael had a jump shot, but I don't like going more than 12 to 15 feet out. I wouldn't trust it as much. He was honestly much more of a slasher than I think people remember, and I don't want people to blow me up and say like, "Oh, Michael Jordan was like the most versatile scorer ever," because I think if you're saying that, you have been listening to like your dad or your uncle talk about Michael Jordan, and you actually might not have seen all the games, because I'm not trying to act like I know everything about Mike, but I've watched a decent amount of his games, and he does a lot of good mid-range scoring, but honestly most of his scoring feels like it's like from about 12 feet and in, and the range is limited is all I'm saying. Thinking about other all-time great scorers, I think people are going to think about Shaq or Kobe. I think Kobe is he is basically doesn't have as great of a range as Durant, and obviously doesn't have nearly as much height as Durant. Has pretty similar game, but I would just say like Kobe's footwork was a lot better as far as getting positioning he wanted, like on the block for post-ups and low block fadeaways, because he actually did quite a bit of those because he emulated Jordan's game in that way. Kobe's mid-range game pretty solid, but again, to me, the big difference is Durant has a lot of that same stuff, but Durant is just a much superior perimeter shooter. And then when I think about Shaq, I think about his major inefficiencies from the line, and then also his inability to score from about outside of 3 feet of the hoop. And although he did great from within those 3 feet, let's say you had a great defender in the game, like it's actually pretty hard because the great centers of the time weren't really in their prime when Shaq was in the league. Like when you had Olajuwon and Ewing early on, they could do a decent job of defending him, and even very early on, Mutombo could do decent defending him. But once Shaq got in his prime, which was really like about the year 2000 to 2003, Mutombo was old, Ewing was old. Ewing and Olajuwon by that point were basically like on their last legs, and they weren't even playing like starters minutes anymore. There wasn't really like another prime center to necessarily challenge Shaq at that time. I was thinking maybe Duncan, but Robinson was still there, so it was more like Robinson guarding him normally. But even Robinson was old at that time. So for that perspective, I think like we saw phenomenal play from Shaq, but we never saw like another center in his prime at the same time as Shaq. I guess Alonzo Mourning, but for a lot of the time they weren't in the same conference, so they very rarely actually played each other, like twice a year. Um, so I guess Zoe is our best example of somebody who could stop him, but there's like one Zoe in the league and not many others. So all I'm saying is that like Shaq dominated, but there weren't people that were like good defenders at the time. And actually, that's a point I want to bring up with Jordan too. Is that the perimeter defenders at the time were the best two in the league were Jordan and Pippen, and Jordan never had to play against those guys, obviously, because one of them is him and the other is his teammate. So there weren't a lot of great wing defenders to challenge him. Whereas in the NBA today, you have Kawhi, Paul George, and of course, I'm not discrediting those former eras. There's plenty of great wing defenders, but I just think like Jordan had the best ones on his team, so he didn't have to face them as often. I think the closest one as far as like I was gonna say Larry Bird is in the conversation too, but I actually think that Kevin Durant's basically just a better version of Larry Bird as far as actual scoring goes, because Larry Bird had a lot of the same moves, except he just didn't shoot as many threes, and Durant has a lot of the, as I say, many of the same moves, except he's just a better three-point shooter. Thinking about other guys, like I'm not gonna really talk about like Wilt, because I think Wilt is a similar case to Shaq, whereas like he scored a ton, but also like the next tallest dudes were like 6'8", and also there weren't like any, like besides Bill Russell, who was like 3 or 4 inches shorter, there wasn't anybody else that was really going to challenge him. I guess Kareem you could argue for, but again, I think that Kareem actually has a decent case, but again, his scoring is just so, like Kareem basically scores only in the paint, and I don't think he has the complete package like Durant, who can score basically anywhere from like 35 feet and in. LeBron is not in the contest to me. His perimeter scoring is not anywhere near Durant. Curry, you could make an argument, I think, actually, but I don't think his like interior scoring is nearly as good as Durant's, so I'm not gonna argue for that. James Harden, I think to me relies on fouls too much to be in that conversation for his scoring numbers. Allen Iverson, say what you will about how awesome he is. I agree. He's actually one of my favorite players of the early 2000s and all of that, but I just don't think he's big enough to be. I think Durant's a better interior scorer, just honestly based on size. And I don't even actually particularly like Kevin Durant, if I'm being frank. I'm not like a fan of his or a homer or anything. I'm actually very indifferent about Durant. I've never really liked him in OKC, and when he went to the Warriors, I was like, kind of like, oh well, like he's just following what LeBron did and going to Miami, and I've never really cared about Durant one way or another, but I just think he is probably the best scorer we've ever seen as far as the most complete package. Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. Very informal, didn't really have much of a structure to it, but it was kind of a fun topic for me to talk about, and hopefully you guys got something out of it. And with that, I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.